Hey guys, Robbie K here, coming at you with yet another review like we said earlier. Today's second review is on the new sci-fi thriller action called Kin, K-I-N, not Ken like in Barbie's Ken. Regardless, my friends, this movie looks to be promising in the hopes of what will be a gigantic display of essentially um, probably big budget special effects and potentially some decent acting just depending on what the trailer is. Regardless, we have a lot in store of surprises that could come. But as always, I'm here to kind of give you the 411 on what's in the movie theater. So as always, let's head in, do what we do best, and give you my thoughts. Now, the premise of it is essentially a little boy living in a rough part of the neighborhood is poor and trying to figure out how to make some money. In his quest to essentially find scrap, he winds up on a gun that somehow responds to him, and before he knows it, is wielding one of the most powerful weapons ever known to man. The result is everybody is coming after him in hopes of trying to obtain the weapon or some other personal goal that ends up unfolding in this tale. That's about all I can tell you without ruining any part of the plot holes, or not plot holes, but plot dynamics. So until then, let's get to the review. Stage 1 review is this. For a science fiction kind of drama action, it's not half bad. The introduction of the main character was a good starting performance, a nice, believable kid role that maybe didn't have the most dynamic emotional flux, but certainly did a great job in some other categories, such as the ability to look like she's startled, etc. I'm getting ahead of myself, we'll come to that. Regardless, the cast and crew were fitting, fun, playful characters that a lot of the preteen teen audience will probably get hooked onto within the easy 30 minutes of the movie. It's actually got a very interesting kind of how deep the rabbit hole goes because there are multiple things happening. There's so, I guess you would say, not connected, not as dynamic, and the result is not as static, but they're so kind of obscure, yet there is a one aspect that actually ties them all together. And that's kind of you're wanting to see how it's going to finish, where everything comes together in the final display. In addition to the special effects, they do their part as well, but it's not so much an action as it is kind of a glorified teenage drama. Kin is a little more PG rated, PG-13 rated than most of the movies that I've seen over the last few weeks in the summer. But nevertheless, it does its job and will spread about it. If you can, and spread amongst a lot of audience members to be kind of happy for. Now, the result about this is that the movie is okay, in my opinion. It's got its enough dynamics, it's got its quirks, and it's going to appeal to probably the younger audiences the best compared to the older audiences. It's, as I said, fun at times, but other parts not so much, and because besides some of the special effects scenes, there just isn't enough special effects moments to actually warrant a trip to the theater to capture it all in its magical splendor. Didn't work for me on that level. What did work, though, was essentially a good kind of startup performance and probably worth a view on the on whatever kind of streaming device you wish to use or whatever rental service you choose to go for. Anyway, let's kind of head to stage 2, and then I'll give you kind of the scores. The likes. As I was trying to get ahead of myself on, the acting actually wasn't too bad for most of the characters. I myself like the main character. He did a nice job playing kind of the titular, kind of playing the role of the character, stuck between all of these worlds and just trying to find a place in it. His adoptive brother, he did a nice job for what he was in. A more dynamic role than any of the other pieces. Kind of a balance between responsible versus irresponsible. And you know what? It actually worked quite well, even though there were some kind of cheesy cameo components that maybe weren't the best thought out, in my opinion. In addition, the other girl that you've seen in the trailers, she did a fantastic job as well, for, again, the parts that she was in. Not the most complex role, not the most complicated, but a nice kind of balance, like something in a meal that you add in order to offset the kind of heavy dynamics the other two characters do. So, bravo into that component. In regards to the kind of story plot, it's a semi-believable story, minus the fact of the weapon from the future and kind of the end game, which I won't really talk about. It really is kind of more of a preteen soap opera mixed in with a little bit of kind of a modern day edge, in the terms of every character seems to have kind of their own agenda, and as they're mixing together, it leads to a few overdramatic moments that kind of blend the aspects of family, crime, and relationships by far down to its very core. The story, fortunately, though, has got enough dynamic pieces to it that it stays sort of refreshing at times and keeps you kind of resetting so that you can get through this journey. A short runtime helps because you're going to hit parts that are a little stale. And if you're like me and you're on your fourth film, you're probably ready to kind of take a break from it. But nevertheless, it's not too long of a movie, unlike the one I saw last night, The Little Strangers, that felt like 3 when it was only an hour and 40. In regards to that, Ken's big thing is that there's great acting chemistry amongst them, not just the actors themselves, but a great chemistry component. And I gotta say that it was definitely one that kept doing a lot of twists to keep you on your toes. So good for the dynamic change in paces without kind of diverging too much from the main plot itself. In terms of the special effects, they actually created some pretty cool visuals, whether it be the futuristic technology of one set of group who's looking for kind of the weapon to the weapon itself. A nice dazzling display that really kind of had the movie theater quality without overstepping the limits. So yeah, nothing like you'll see in Face Off in Marvel movies, but not a bad display of effects either, and fits very well again with the theme of the movie. But now let's kind of hit to the dislikes. Well, the first thing is I have nothing against James Franco other than the fact that he can't seem to escape the sleazy kind of slum roles that he's been sticking to. And this one was no exception. While they certainly got their bang for their buck, it was a stale role for me and just not that impressive anymore given the grand scheme of everybody else's character. There wasn't so much threat to him other than he looks like he needed a bath, probably a good shave, and definitely a few vaccines and treatments for potential STDs that his character was holding. I know that's how they were probably designing it, so maybe props to the makeup department as well if I haven't said it. But the character is just not that big of a villain, and I kind of would have liked them see it to take a different route for villains than what they did. It's not awful, but it's just not impressive to me either. When I've seen a lot of his roles kind of go downhill, and it wasn't even funny this time like some of his other roles did. In addition, I'm not going to lie, I got bored a couple of times because as you start seeing these antics and these continued plot points beaten over the head with, you eventually get the picture and you kind of don't need a reminder anymore. But nevertheless, they just keep going on and on and on, kind of like I am right now. But for almost the hour and like 45 minutes it runs, it's just beating those same plot holes over and over again. Plot devices, I'm sorry. Over and over again, just really didn't do it for me, and I just kind of was ready for it to end at one point. I think there are some plot holes in it, and I actually mean plot holes this time, more so in the fact of how the kid seems to be super smart and resourceful, yet kind of connect the pieces when a lot of things are kind of laid out for him. So it's not awful, but at the same time, it's kind of bypassing the character's intelligence for naivety in this one aspect. And I guess that also kind of made me roll my eyes as well. There are some stars and characters who need more time as well. I think they did a good job with the kid, and I think they did a good job with his adoptive brother and kind of giving the backstory as shallow as a backstory as it was for at least one of them. But the other two characters, and not including James Franco, they needed a lot more screen time and inclusion for kind of the build-up that they were trying to do. It's not awful, and one of them, though, I'd guess maybe he doesn't have as high a price tag as I think, but I would have expected more, sort of like a Bryan Cranston thing like we saw in that Godzilla movie, where this guy is included, do more with him. And they just didn't. And as for the girl, like I said, she was a great balance. I kind of would have liked to see her integration a little more than some of the choices that they made. But that's just me. In regards to kind of some other components that go with it, I gotta say I did like the ending, but the biggest disappointment had to be the action component. Kin isn't one of those newfound western slash science fiction ones I like to see. Guns blazing, lots of special effects flying. And while I appreciate that the action kind of goes along with the theme of the movie, I was really looking for an exciting climax. But it was a very one-sided ordeal. Very kind of simple choreography. Meant to be funny, and at times I chuckled, but I don't think it quite had the same punch that they really wanted to do with it. And as a result, the simplistic thing just wasn't worth the wait for me, and to be honest, when it came to it. And again, I guess this is setting up for what's potentially going to be a series, but not bad when it comes to being an adapted version of an adapted version from a short film that the directors did. Sort of like 9, but I think I like 9 better. And we're not talking the dance show, we're talking the sock puppet ones. Anyway, I guess when I look at the grand scheme of things, did I have anything else? I guess it was just very simplistic, and even though complex, it wasn't complex like The Matrix, good to get your thoughts provoking and opening new concepts. It's just more of a glorified science soap opera with, yes, good chemistry, good acting, and good special effects, but not really utilizing all these to the full extent I think they could have. Still, not an awful movie, not a bad movie. And seeing as this is potentially the first in who knows how long, and again, it is adapted from a short film of probably 15 minutes. I do give the movie props for potentially setting up a new science fiction genre or series for kind of the modern day preteens and teens. So overall, what am I going to give it? In its category, it's probably a solid 6, 6.5. Movie overall, I'm going to give it a 5 just because I think there's a lot of premise there and there's a lot of potential. Now that they've sowed the seeds and that ending in terms of the story mode has really set up a good dynamic, let's hope they'll maximize that and really kind of take it to the next level it needs to be. But only time will tell, as well as if it makes enough in the box office to warrant it. So until then, guys, we're going to leave you with the last movie review. Please share, like, subscribe, do whatever you can to kind of help me do better. And comments are always appreciated if constructive to help me be better. Until then, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week. Bye.